Hey, it's Bradley J.
Hey Brad, what's up?
I'm reviewing Spirited Away and I could really use your help.
Absolutely, that sounds fantastic. You're not eating right now, are you?
Yeah, actually, really good.
You need to stop eating now.
What are you talking about?
It's dangerous to eat when talking about Spirited Away. Have you not heard what happens?
No.
You'll turn into a pig.
Uh-oh.
Bradley, what happened? Brad? Brad?
I am well aware that I'm out of my element here. I'm not a big anime fan, and the trailer for this film was a little bit intimidating, as was the fact that everyone I've spoken to about this loves the film. So once again I'm calling in help. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave from Totally Accurate Gaming.
Hey Brad, thanks for getting me involved. You know I'm not going to pass up an opportunity to talk about Studio Ghibli. Now, I know you've reviewed a few animated movies before, but these were pretty much all Western animations. I'm really curious, how much anime have you watched before starting this review?
Well, I like the Pokemon Indigo League.
Okay, we're going with Pokemon. And to be fair, that's probably the first Japanese animation I watched too. It's classic.
Oh, and Sonic X.
Okay, I'd never watched Sonic X. Did I miss out?
I like the reimagining of the Sonic game stories, but I don't think it's a particularly hot take to say that Chris Thorndike can f*** off.
So, not exactly a glowing recommendation there. But in all seriousness, I'd say Spirited Away works regardless of how familiar you are with Japanese animation. I first watched it all the way back in 2001, and at that point I'd literally only watched Ghost in the Shell and Akira, and oh yeah, naturally Pokemon. But Spirited Away is so much unlike anything else.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Here's our review of Spirited Away. Chihiro and her family are moving to a new town but get lost on the way. They get out of the car to look around what looks like an old abandoned amusement park despite Chihiro's protests. Her parents find a food place and start eating very enthusiastically despite no one being there to serve them. Chihiro wanders off and meets a young boy who tells her to leave immediately before it gets dark. She does so but finds that her parents have been transformed into pigs. Chihiro panics and bumps into the boy again, who begins to tell her about the world she stumbled into. A powerful witch Ibabu runs the bathhouse and the land surrounding it, and in order for Chihiro not to be transformed into an animal herself, she must get a job from the witch with the help of the boilerman Kamaji and staff member Lin. Chihiro eventually convinces Ibabu to give her a job as Lin's assistant, but she takes her name, calling her Sen from now on. The boy then appears as Ibabu's henchman Haku, who, although initially acting cold towards Sen, explains everything the next day. If Sen forgets her real name completely, she will never leave the bathhouse, and her parents will remain as pigs forever. Sen works hard but inadvertently lets in a ghostly figure with a white mask that helps her with a difficult client. Initially thought to be a stink spirit, but instead revealed as a polluted river spirit who rewards Sen with a magic dumpling. The next day, Sen sees an injured Haku in his dragon form being chased by a flock of paper birds. One of the birds transforms into the image of Ibabu's identical twin sister Zeniba, who transforms Ibabu's giant baby into a mouse, her attack bird into a tiny bird, and accuses Haku of stealing a magical golden seal from her. Sen and Haku escape to the boiler room where, thanks to the magic dumpling, Haku coughs up the seal and breaks a spell on it. Haku recovers in the boiler room while Sen vows to go to Zeniba's house to apologize and save Haku. Before she can though, she has to stop the rampage of the monster that's destroying the bathhouse, a monster that evolved from the ghostly figure she let in named No-Face. No-Face has been creating gold out of nothing and tipping everyone who he comes into contact with. When Sen declines his fortunes in favour of helping Haku, No-Face starts eating the staff and causing carnage. Ibabu forces Sen to face the monster and she feeds the remains of the magic dumpling to No-Face. This causes the monster to start vomiting and chasing Sen through the bathhouse to the sea outside. No-Face regurgitates the staff and reverts back to his normal form and becomes sedate again, now joining Sen on her quest to visit Zeniba. They take the train to Swamp Bottom and find that Zeniba is actually a really kind old woman, the opposite to Ibabu, who takes in Sen, No-Face and her newly transformed animal companions. Haku meanwhile recovers fully and heads up to Swamp Bottom to apologise for stealing the seal. Zeniba forgives him and Sen returns to the bathhouse on Dragon Haku's back. No-Face remains behind to help Zeniba around the house. En route to the bathhouse, Sen is reminded of a time she fell into a river and was spared from drowning by the spirit of the river. The name of the river is the Kohaku River, Haku's real name. He is the spirit of the river. With that, Ubabu's spell is broken over Haku and he's now free from her contract. They arrive back at the bathhouse, and after transforming the mouse back into her baby, Ibabu gives Sen a chance to leave with her parents as long as she can identify which of the 10 pigs presented to her are her parents. Sen correctly states that none of them are, and Chihiro is freed. Her parents are transformed back into humans, and they leave, heading back to the car. Chihiro's parents have no idea what's happened. The only clue that their car is now covered in dust.
And brief. So, genuinely excellent summary, great stuff. But I think the question on everyone's lips is, what do you think?
I don't know!
What? I was not expecting that. I was thinking you might say something about the art style, which I think's great, by the way. The warmth of the characters, Chihiro's journey. I mean, something at least.
I don't know what to tell you, Dave. Writing the plot summary for this is tough because I had to decide what's relevant and what's not, whilst also trying to summarise the plot to those who maybe haven't seen the film. I suspect that there is a lot of Japanese culture and context which I've missed, but either I research it all and treat this like I did with Donnie Darko, or I look at the film at face value. And looking at it at face value, it's a weird film, but I'm also not accustomed to Japanese culture or anime in general.
I think your experience of the film is actually really similar to mine. I went in with literally no expectations and very little knowledge of Japanese culture. I was completely blown away, but only found out later on there's a heavy influence from Japanese Shinto Buddhism. Most of the spirits of the bathhouse are similar to the kami seen in that religion and to Japanese mythology in general. If you want to dive deep into the meaning of this film, there are a heck of a lot of interpretations, but I still think it's no way essential to actually enjoying the film. I think it says a lot as well, that it made me want to look into these areas in more detail after watching it.
At times it feels like it's being weird for weirdness' sake. Why is Ubabu's head gigantic? Why does Kamaji have 6 elongated arms? And what is up with no face? I am the most confused by this character, as the whole rampaging beast thing seems superfluous to the plot. He's necessary to help Sen with the river spirit, but then he gets greedy, tries to kill Sen, and then goes to help her again with barely any protest from anyone.
You called it out for being weird, but to me it's super creative. You never know quite what to expect.
I can appreciate that. Weird and creative is my sweet spot.
Yeah, it really hits home the fact that this is a completely distinct and magical world. We're as new to it as Chihiro is. Before we talk about No Face, something really important for a second. We need to talk about how Grandpa from Rugrats is a spider now.
Boy, I'm really glad Kamaji didn't take his teeth out. That might have ended it for me there.
That's a lovely thought. So, I'm going to start talking about No Face, since before that you mentioned No Face. This is my take on the character, but I think it shows how personalities can be affected by their environments. If you notice, No Face is initially a completely blank state. It only starts becoming greedy after being exposed to some of the more selfish creatures in the bathhouse. It rampages because it wants Chihiro. Chihiro is the only person that ever showed it any kindness, but wasn't as a result of a desire for gold. When No Face goes to live as Zembiba, it calms down. It even takes up knitting. And I think this whole idea of characters being reflected by their environments, you can see this for Stink Spirit as well. The only reason for its initially disgusting appearance is pollution. It was a literal product of its environment.
I didn't really notice the soundtrack during the film, mostly because I was trying to figure out what was going on. But I gave the soundtrack a listen on its own, and it's nice. I wouldn't say it's blow you away amazing, but it's pleasant on the ear. It's the kind of music you'd listen to in the background when doing a tedious admin task.
And done. And that's it. My brand new Film Review Open Challenge t-shirt is on T-Mill.
Oi! You didn't say anything about merch!
Gotta make a living.
Alright, so to backtrack a wee bit back to the soundtrack, is it bad that I didn't find it particularly memorable either? I had to go back and specifically listen to it to be able to comment here. What I think is quite unusual about it, that it's really old-fashioned. We're talking a full orchestra playing a film score that would sound at home in a 40s or 50s Technicolor movie here, but it certainly fits the atmosphere of the film, and it somehow makes the spirit world feel unique and magical.
I will say visually this is a very pretty movie. Anime style isn't the most well known to me, but I'd never thought it was ugly. I am about to make history though, because I'm going to talk about frame rate.
That's not something I was expecting. You're a frame rate snob.
No, not at all. It's just something I noticed is all. When the action is fast paced, things are really smooth, but when things are slower, the frame rate slows down. I don't know if it's deliberate or not, but it was a bit distracting.
You know, I think it's probably worth bearing in mind this is still a 2001 film, and it was entirely hand-drawn. By that time, Disney, DreamWorks, and other Western studios were all including elements of CG in their output. Personally, I love the fact Studio Ghibli kept the traditional approach. It can be really jarring if CG is implemented poorly, and at this time, the industry was still learning how to best work with CG. I mean, yes, there might be a couple of moments where the frame rate's inconsistent, but I think the art direction hugely compensates for this. You get such a good impression of even the minor characters and their visual design and the animation. The locations too. There are times you feel you can literally smell parts of the bathhouse. I mean, this is a genuinely beautiful film.
Now, full disclosure, I watched the English dub, and you know what? The cast aren't that bad. Considering that the film was made for a Japanese voice cast, the English cast aren't just phoning it in. Some well-known names including Lauren Holly from NCIS, Michael Chiklis from Fantastic Four, and Davey Chase from Lilo and Stitch, and Donnie Darko.
But man, Donnie Darko again? What's up with that?
I have no idea. It's really weird that it keeps coming up.
I know purists will always say, watch the original language audio, but as far as dubs go, I think they did a really good job here. It shows how much confidence Disney had in the film. They got Pixar to sort out the dub.
I want to circle back to the story briefly. I feel structurally it works, but it also feels like stuff happens rather than a cohesive story. Chihiro meets Haku and then finds her parents transformed, then starts to disappear, then can't walk, then needs to get a job. This goes on throughout the entire film, with explanations being the equivalent of Lucy Lawless's comeback.
Yeah. Well, whenever you notice something like that, a wizard did it.
I'm in two minds here. To me, the majority of things that happen make sense within the rules of a film's world. And I think that sense of confusion is completely intentional. It's allowing our experience to mirror Chihiro's feelings of being lost and adrift. But there's one event I completely agree makes literally no sense. Yababa's the film's main antagonist throughout, and she's a constant threat to Chihiro. Even at the film's climax, she sets Chihiro the challenge of successfully locating her parents from a group of pigs. If Chihiro guesses correctly, she's free to escape, but the risk is her parents' deaths if she's wrong. But after Chihiro guesses correctly, Yababa's whole personality changes from cruel and selfish to kindly and supportive. I mean, WTF? Where did that even come from?
Wizard.
Well, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed experiencing Spirited Away, but this isn't going to start my conversion to an otaku.
Dude, don't say otaku. That's almost as bad as Weibo.
Well, why don't you tell me about the film from your point of view? This is one of your favourite ever films, right?
Absolutely, and there are so many reasons. It's not afraid to do things differently. How many other films, especially at the time, would choose its central character to be a young girl? It gives us a wondrous and beautiful world. There are moments of delight, humour, and real warmth, but also horror. The pig transformation scene is truly unsettling, and who honestly expects to see 3 bouncing heads accompanying a giant baby? At its core, though, the film shows Chihiro's journey away from childhood and towards adulthood and independence. Its core message is one of true positivity. It shows that even in a world where the majority are indifferent to you, just a couple of kind acts can make all of the difference. I think it acts as a fantastic example of not just great Japanese animation, but a great film, full stop.
This is another one of those films that I can see as a very high quality film, but really isn't my thing. That doesn't mean I hate it. In fact, at times I enjoyed it. But overall, Spirited Away just doesn't click with me. It won a ridiculous amount of awards, including Best Animated Feature at the Oscars in 2002, beating out films such as Lilo and Stitch, Ice Age, and Treasure Planet. Amazingly, it's also recently become a stage show.
That's news to me. That's not even going to work.
It looks absolutely gorgeous, but I just can't see myself going to see it. Dave, why don't you give your final thoughts on the film?
I've laid my cards on the table here. I've already said that I love this film. But ask yourself, are you feeling fatigued after a seemingly endless procession of CG animated films? Are you looking for something unique, with depth? Something that every frame oozes the fact it's been made with love, by artists and craftspeople at the very, very top of their games? If so, this could just be the film for you.
Spirited Away is a beautiful, surreal, magical adventure that will either capture your heart or leave you cold. Unfortunately, it's the latter for me. I can recognise the quality, the effort, and the reasons people love this, and you'll note I've never stated this is a bad film. This is just a film that has alienated me. I may give it another go, but it won't be for some time. Spirited Away has washed over me. Thank you very much to Dave from Totally Accurate Gaming for joining me today. And in the spirit of plugging things, I'm raising money for a local charity called Medway Puzzles as part of my 50th Film Review Open Challenge video due out this November. For more information, check out www.justgiving.com/crowdfunding/Bradley J Films or click on the video in the top right of the screen. Coming up next for the Film Review Open Challenge is The Dark Crystal. For now though, thank you very much for watching.